So, 2025 in Hollywood, yeah, it was a bit of a rough ride. But was it, quote, the most abysmal year ever? Well, one critic certainly thinks so, and today we're going to deconstruct their absolutely scathing review. Just to be clear, we're not here to agree or disagree, but to really get into the weeds and unpack the arguments behind such a bold claim.
Okay, so let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The entire critique we're looking at hinges on this one pretty brutal statement, an abomination of cinema. That is strong. So what evidence could possibly back up a verdict that harsh? Let's find out. And again, just so we're all on the same page, our job today isn't to put 2025 on trial. It's to examine the case file that this critic has built. We're going to look at the specific movies they use as evidence and really try to understand the logic behind their conclusion.
All right, first up on the chopping block is how Hollywood has been handling its most beloved classics. And the prime exhibit for this argument? You guessed it, Disney's live-action remake of Snow White.
The critic's point here is that the writing was on the wall for this movie long before it ever hit theaters. Their analysis builds this timeline of controversy, from public comments made by the cast to huge changes in the story. It was like a perfect storm of negative buzz building for years. And this slide, this is really where the critic digs in. The argument is that this wasn't just some modern update. It was a total rewrite of the story's DNA. The entire theme shifts from a fairy tale about innocence and vanity to a story about, quote, girl boss agency. And the prince? He goes from being the symbol of true love to a thieving vagabond. A pretty big change. So when the movie finally dropped, the review basically argues it was just a mess of bad decisions. The critic points to everything from what they call wooden acting to seriously creepy CGI creatures. They also call out the decision to cut classic songs and the use of really obvious cheap-looking green screen effects. Now this part is fascinating because it's a little bit of Hollywood inside baseball. A B+ cinema score. Sounds pretty good, right? An A is great, a B+ is still good. While as the review explains, for a gigantic blockbuster from Disney, a B+ is actually a huge red flag. It's a sign that the diehard fans who rushed out on opening night were not impressed. Okay, moving on to the next major category of cinematic sins, according to our critic. This is all about films that tried to say something important, but in the reviewer's opinion, just completely fumbled the message. The main target here is a film that actually got a ton of awards buzz, Amelia Perez. But the critic's take is that in its effort to be so progressive, the film actually ends up doing the complete opposite, becoming, well, decidedly regressive. And the review just lays out this whole rap sheet against the movie. It's accused of everything from cultural misrepresentation to writing characters who do terrible things while the script screams at you that they're the good guys. The critic basically says it fails on almost every level it's trying to succeed on. And it's a similar story for the Jordan Peele-produced horror movie Him. It gets called out for bringing up all these really big, important ideas, but then just not doing anything with them. The critic argues the film presents this whole buffet of heavy topics: sacrifice, race, the violence of sports culture, but then it never actually develops any of them. They're just kind of there. The themes are introduced and then totally abandoned, which leaves the whole movie feeling, as the critic puts it, thematically half-baked. Okay, so the third and final pattern the critic points to is maybe the most basic one of all: films with scripts that are just fundamentally broken. We're talking about plots that make absolutely no sense. The review uses the new War of the Worlds as its poster child for this, and the example is pretty wild. The critic highlights the main character's workflow. He's a top NSA analyst, right? During an alien invasion, he's taking calls from NASA on Microsoft Teams and getting his live updates from Fox News. It's presented as just completely illogical. And according to the review, it all leads to this: climax. The critic argues the whole thing just nosedives into what they call blatant, absurd product placement that completely shatters any sense of reality or tension the film had. Then the critique pivots to Tron Aries, and this one's a doozy. The argument here is that there's a single plot hole so massive that it basically breaks the entire logic of the movie. So the review calls this the 29-minute problem, and it goes like this. The movie sets up a hard rule that the bad guys can only survive in our world for 29 minutes at a time. The heroes have laptops, they're completely mobile. So why don't they just move 30 minutes away? The critic argues it's a flaw so huge it makes the heroes look dumb and removes any real stakes. So, after all of that, after tearing apart all these different movies, what's the big takeaway? What's the critic's final verdict on the state of Hollywood in 2025?
Well, it really all boils down to these three major categories of failure. You've got botched remakes, totally muddled messages, and just plain broken scripts. According to the source, this is the toxic combination that created the so-called abysmal year for movies.
And the whole point here, the big takeaway from the critic, is that this isn't just about a few bad films. It's about what they see as a systemic crisis of creativity and just basic competence in modern blockbuster filmmaking.
And that's really what I want to leave you with. Whether you agree with this critic or think they're totally off base, what does this kind of super intense, detailed, and frankly frustrated criticism reveal about our relationship with movies today? Is this just a sign of a growing disconnect, or is it a genuine hunger for better stories? It's definitely something to think about.